Hi, it's Erika with ConsciousParents.org with this week's video blog, which is actually a follow-up post to one that I did last week about picky eaters. So if you have not seen that one yet, I highly recommend going to listen to it. It's about 8 minutes long, but it's going to give you a real good background on the philosophy behind the conscious parenting approach to picky eating, as well as the health repercussions of a picky eater. So definitely go back and listen to that one. It's on the blog as well. So I did promise in that video that I was going to give you some more how-tos this week instead of just the foundational principles. And when it comes to picky eating, it's really hard to come up with some hard and fast rules simply because there are so many dynamics going on that contribute to that scenario. For example, how many children are there? What are the different personalities? How have the parents handled it in the past? When does it come up? How is the family settled into this new dynamic? So realize that there's so many iterations of this, and when I consult with families, I do understand what the underlying issues are, what the dynamics are, and that's how we come up with our specific approach. But I did want to follow through and give you some basic guidelines of how to address this in your family. So let's assume that there's a picky eater in the home. Maybe there's a couple of children, and you've sort of resorted to making that child a sort of a separate meal as often because they just don't like what you're eating, and it's just easier. A lot of parents just fall into that because it's just easier. They don't know what else to do, and they just are tired of fighting it, and they don't know what else to try. So let's assume that's the scenario that we're talking about. One thing that I would recommend is, as a how-to, is if you're not already doing a family meal, start a family meal once a day. Typically dinner time's a good one. Sometimes breakfast can be, but it's a little bit hurried and a little crazy with everyone trying to get out the door. So dinner time's a really good time. And what I would suggest is, as parents, sit down with the entire family, not just the child who has the problem, the picky eating going on. And I hate to say problem because that's not really what it is. It's a situation. And sit down with the whole family and acknowledge that you've come to a decision as parents and say, listen, we've done things a certain way in the past, and we realize we're not doing the best job as parents by allowing you to eat only a few different foods, or, doing it however we've done it, whether it's create a separate meal for one child, whatever, and just say, we're wanting to do it differently. We want to do the best job we can to teach you healthy eating, and we're going to start doing it differently now. So whatever those words are, whatever your specific scenario is, have that conversation with the family and announce and acknowledge that you are changing how you used to do things, and that that's a decision that you've made for the betterment of the family. So what you should do is then start having the family meal. And when you serve the family meal, what I suggest is serving family style. So you create the meal, you put it on the table in different bowls, and have every person have their own plate, and each child gets to serve themselves. Now, again, you lay this all out with them ahead of time so that they know this, and there's not a lot of questions at the beginning, is allow each child to serve themselves. Don't have any guidelines of how much food they're supposed to take of each type, if they're supposed to finish their plates, nothing like that. If the child only takes one thing and only eats that, that's okay. So what I do suggest is, when you're starting this out, trying to get the family shifting, make sure you do have at least one item on the table that your picky eater will eat, that you're okay with. Just because, again, we're trying to shift the dynamic from the picky eating being the issue or a thing in the family that sort of takes on its own life, and making it a non-issue. That's the underlying strategy beneath all that I'm teaching when it comes to picky eating, is making it a non-issue and making the food a non-issue. And that's, I'm sure you're thinking, like, what are you talking about? That is the issue. It's the picky eating. So here's what I mean by that. Making it a non-issue takes the charge, if you get that word, takes the charge out of the topic. So whereas typically parents are used to discussing, are you going to make sure you have to have this before you leave the table? You need to have this, or you need to finish this, or you need to make sure you try this. I mean, there's always something relating to the picky eating, or the thing is that you've resigned yourself to making a separate meal for your child and you don't even talk about it. But make it a non-issue whether the child eats the food, doesn't eat the food, puts it on their plate, or whatever. what that's going to do is it's going to give the child an opportunity to develop an inner compass, because it's their body, it's their decision-making process. When you're not around and they're somewhere else at a friend's house, they're the ones that are going to need to learn how to make good decisions, and that's what we want to do. We don't want our child looking to us for approval or disapproval of whether something's okay or not. And I know that's kind of a foreign concept to a lot of people, in that we sort of think we're going to teach our children, but in reality, we want to teach our children to check in with themselves about how they're feeling about things, even from a pretty young age. And granted, again, this is all age appropriate, so that's why it's so hard to kind of create some general rules, because there's so many different scenarios. And that's also why this could be a 2-hour video just by itself, but it's not going to be, I promise. So make it a non-issue. Now, what else I mean by making it a non-issue is, let's say your child tries something. So don't make it an issue if they eat the food or don't eat the food. But especially on the flip side, don't make it an issue or don't acknowledge it even if they do try something else. And I know that sounds totally counterintuitive, because don't you want to reinforce the behavior you're looking to shift? Yeah, that's sort of one of the initial thoughts we have. But in reality, if we make a big deal when somebody tries something, what we're teaching our child is to look to us, to our reaction, to determine if what they've done is good or not. And we don't want that. We want our child to notice how they feel. You'll be amazed at how much pride and a sense of accomplishment children feel when something's their idea and they follow through and they learn something about themselves. You know that moment you've seen your child just light up from the inside when they have a realization that they came to on their own. So that's what we want to do. So when the child tries something new, really, 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 really resist the urge to go, yay, how awesome, I'm so excited. Even though inside you could be doing that. Because I totally get it. I know we get so excited when things change, but please resist. Almost pretend like you're ignoring what's actually happening at the table. So have the family meal, and once a week, here's a good thing too, is have once a week, every child in the house have the say in what the family dinner is. They're going to feel a sense of pride. They're going to feel a sense of responsibility for the family. They're going to feel like part of a bigger unit, which also helps with the development of self, which is important. But what's really interesting is children that are picky eaters, they love the one-on-one time with you, the parents, and preparing the food for the meal. Actually, even they will probably try whatever they've made. They may not like it. Maybe they don't even try it. But chances are their curiosity is going to get to them a little bit, and they're going to at least maybe try the food. And again, we're just having, whether they tried or not shouldn't even be the issue, but it's going to open their eyes up to the different possibilities. And when the children feel like they have had a part in creating the food, naturally they're going to want to taste it. They'll probably nibble as they create it and all that. So then they're getting some good food. So anyway, that's another thing you can do. Obviously within healthy boundaries of what's okay, give them some limited choices. But allow them to have a little bit of a say, and they'll feel that sense of pride. Even the youngest children in the family, they love being the one to decide what the entire family gets to eat for dinner. So that's another strategy. And another little how-to that you can always do, which is really important, is model your decision-making to your child. Now, what do I mean by that? So, for example, when you're at the table, maybe you can just say something like, gosh, I've never had this before. I think I'm going to try it. Or, the last time I had that I didn't really like it, but today for some reason I'm really enjoying it. And just leave it at that. So showing your child how you go about thinking about food makes a really big difference, especially up until age 6. That's really, really important. So let's see, what else did I forget to cover? So here's the bottom line. If a picky eater, if you start doing all this stuff, maybe your picky eater won't really change their eating habits that much. But what is going to change is their sense of self. Because like I discussed in the first video, by taking away their power in the family to impact how the whole family operates, because they eat differently, they're going to feel so much more secure. Because remember, everything is either, children filter everything through 2 parts of their brain. It's either something's going to create some growth and expansion, or fear and constriction. So the more that children feel like the parents have the boundaries of the home and they've got the leadership in the role, children feel safe and secure, and they can devote more of their resources into developing. So even if your child does not change how they actually eat based on these, by shifting the power back to the parents to be the leadership role, is going to actually have a huge impact on their health and in their emotional development. So please post your comments and questions below, because I know there's so much about this topic that I can't do this justice, and I know you probably have a lot of questions. So please put them below. I might do another one next week on this topic, depending on the feedback that I get. But in the meantime, until next week, always focus on the good, live from the heart, and love all over your precious little ones. In abundant gratitude always.